Thank you, Ann. She really will. She's ruthless. I'm going to, in my remarks, try and do three things. First, talk about the impact of the increased power of finance capital, because we really are in a different stage of capitalist development, and we need to understand that. Second is that this shift to finance capital is destructive in particular ways that we need to understand that make Wall Street the appropriate target for our action. I want to talk about that. And if there's time, and Ann really will cut me off without mercy, I'll draw some political implications. I'm going to use a lot of numbers, and I don't expect everybody to, you can't internalize all this, but you get the idea. At the end, I will give my email address, and I've written all this out. I'm happy to send it to anybody who wants it. But do not put me on your e-list for your organization, please. Really, I just can't take it. All right. There's little doubt that the signature development of our time is the growth of finance. In 1980, and I should say 1980 is sort of the dividing line between what some of us call the era of national Keynesianism, the post-war period when unions were strong, where the welfare state was healthy, rich paid more tax and so on. And after 1980, the structure is global neoliberalism. And I don't have to tell you what that's been about. And it really is a very sharp break when you look at the numbers. It's not just that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher came in, but they represented much larger forces going on. So in 1980, the total value of all world financial assets was $12 trillion. Okay, $12 trillion in 1980. 25 years later, it had increased at a tremendous growth, 10 times faster than the growth of the rest of the world economy, 10 times faster. Finance is growing so rapidly, and it's true of all aspects of finance. In 1980, the value of global financial assets just about equaled world gross national product, right? How much we produce, financial assets, about equal. In 2005, financial assets were more than 3 times all of the world's output, and they've continued to go up very dramatically. It's been a creation of what Marx called fictitious capital. This is assets that do not necessarily correspond to real value in the actual economy. And so that you get these bubbles, the last 3 expansions in our economy have been bubbles of different kinds. Real estate, stock market, high tech, whatever. They blow up and then they collapse. And when they collapse, ordinary people who had nothing to do with all that, didn't make any money off of it, whose pension funds invested in it, get smashed. And we go through jobless recoveries after that, as we're doing now. Close to 5 years after this recession was supposedly over, for working people it hasn't changed. The reason the unemployment rate has gone down about 2.5% is because people have either dropped out of the labor market, they've given up looking for work, or they haven't entered the labor market because the population has gone up, young people have come in, and a lot of people just are not finding jobs. And the way unemployment is counted, if you haven't actively looked for work, you're not counted as unemployed. So the figure is a very misleading one. In terms of the number of people employed, it's about the same as at the end of the Great Recession, supposedly 4.5 years ago, as a percentage of the population. Okay, the value of oil futures traded went from 20% of global production and consumption to 10 times as much, okay? From 20% to 10 times that. So you see, whatever it is, collateralized debt obligations, derivative contracts, all of these new products are part of speculation. And the reason the growth of the speculation has taken place is that we are not seeing investment in the real economy. We're not, certainly not in the United States. We're seeing very little investment, very little job creation, and the incredible growth of income inequality which I think we're all familiar with, but I'll give you some numbers. The growth of inequality means two things. It means the 1% have this vast amount of money, and what they do with it is speculate, because they don't invest it, because people do not have the money to buy anything. The average working person has a living standard of the late 1970s in terms of the real purchasing power of the average working person. So they borrow money to try and maintain their living standard. So part of the financialization is this increase in debt. Along with that, if you're a student or you have kids in college, you know that the government is contributing much less to higher education, so student debt has gone up. It's more than credit card debt in our country. And students have taken on this debt thinking they'd get a decent job so they could pay off the debt. Those decent jobs aren't there, and they're looking at a lifetime of debt servitude. I mean, this is a very different kind of situation. So hedge funds, private equity groups, they now are controlling the economy, and they are draining the surplus from the productive economy, not putting it back into job creation. And they don't put it into job creation because there's no money in producing stuff you can't sell. So it has to go into speculation. And working people have to go into debt. That creates a bubble, and then it collapses. That there are economists who believe that we will see another collapse. Why not? We've had 3 of them in a row. There's nothing else. There's no other dynamic in the system. And that's what makes this time very different than other periods in the history of not just America, but capitalism more broadly. Larry Summers. People know who Larry Summers?
Oh, yeah.
I know, he's a great favorite. Larry Summers was denied, as you also know. Obama wanted to make him head of the Federal Reserve, and the progressives in the Senate said, over our dead body. And they understand, and we should understand, when it comes to finance, I don't want to get into Obama total package and all that, and he's got a lot of constraints on him, but basically he has accepted the same economic advisors that Clinton accepted, that every Democratic president is going to accept. They're the Wall Street wing of the Democratic Party. They finance the Democratic Party. They finance Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and that's why the buzz around Elizabeth Warren has gotten so loud, because rank and file Democrats, the people who knock on doors, the trade unions and so on, they understand, that the Democratic Party is controlled at that level by Wall Street, and that we don't like it. Anyway, Larry Summers is a very smart economist. I mean, he's not a nice guy. He's in the pay of the hedge funds and all that, but he's really smart. He gave a speech 3 weeks ago at the International Monetary Fund. I know you all give speeches at the International Monetary Fund all the time, so you know how that goes. But what he said was really interesting. He talked about the American economy is facing secular stagnation. Now, secular stagnation is a term that was developed in the 30s. Monthly Review has explained. If you read Monthly Review, you're probably sick of hearing about secular stagnation. But Larry Summers discovered it, and he said that's where we are. That without a war, without something, and he doesn't see anything on a slump. And let me read you from Bloomberg Business Week. I know there are many communists in the audience who subscribe to Bloomberg Business Week, and so they read this week's issue, and so they've heard this. But for those of you who don't read Business Week,
Thank you.
they describe secular stagnation as a slump that is not the product of the business cycle, but a more or less permanent condition. Summers' conclusion is deeply pessimistic. If he is right, the economy is incapable of producing full employment without financial bubbles on massive stimulus, both of which tend to end badly because they blow up and then they collapse. Now that's Larry Summers. So if you read Krugman in the New York Times, he had a column, similar kind of analysis. Brad DeLong at University of California. A lot of the Keynesians are beginning to see this. What they don't see yet, but which, give them another 6 months, they'll put together, is the inequality the inequality that we've witnessed over this period, and somewhere in here, I'll find it, but this is conditional till I find it in my notes. But I believe from 2007 or 2009 through 2012, the 1% got 95% of all of the increase generated in the country. Now, we think that's unfair and it's not nice and all that. But as an economist, here's the problem. If they get 95%, we get bupkis and we can't spend much. They're not going to go out to the grocery store and buy the food. They're not going to, buy new cars and stuff. Working people, if they can't borrow more, can't buy, and so sales are restrained. So you have a situation where the kind of growth we're having doesn't lead to real growth because it's not recycled into job-creating spending. And so that this stage of capitalism, that's why Larry Summers, as well as Paul Sweezy and Harry Magdoff, when they were alive, saw this tendency in capitalism that gets stronger and stronger as there's more monopoly power and as the financial power comes to dominate the economy. And now the mainstream people are seeing it. The next thing they'll see is the interaction between the inequality and the length of the slump because there's nothing to generate job creation. Now that's very important, that we've seen financial products getting bigger and more of the economy. They've grown from less than 3% to 8% of the total economy. In 2007, just before it crashed, 40% of all profits went to the financial sector, the so-called FIRE, F-I-R-E, finance, insurance, and real estate. 40% of all the profits, right? The companies that actually produce things split 60. Well, they used to split 98%, right? Finance has grown to that extent that they basically dominate. And of course, they dominate the politics through political contributions. The top leaders, and it really doesn't matter if their companies fail. I mean, people say, well, all right, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers failed, so not only did the workers lose their jobs, but these guys lost their stock up. It's not true. While you had over 2000 to 2007, the top 5 executives at Bear Stearns received cash bonuses in excess of $300 million, and at Lehman another $150 million, just the top 5. Then they unloaded their stock because they could see they were going into the toilet. So before anybody else realized it, they sold their stock. They walked away with a lot, and everybody else got basically screwed. So the reality here, and it's really hard, but I will count. There's a source which I know you will trust: the CIA. The CIA ranks countries in the world by income inequality. The United States has more income inequality than Egypt or Tunisia. It's at the bottom. We have more inequality than, sub-Saharan African kleptocratic dictators, Mideastern, whatever. We're right down there, that our inequality has grown to that level. The focus on the 1% is something that working people are beginning to understand. And what the right does is it tries to focus anger on government. What the left has got to do is say, yes, government isn't doing what working people wanted to do. That's because, well, the 1% control the government. It's not like there's a separate government here which is supposed to help us. Well, it is supposed to help us. And over here is the economy. The people who control the economy control the government. Now, we all take that for granted. But the rest of America is being forced down their throat, force-fed every day with government is the problem, government is the problem, when the analysis has to be that it is the financial system, it is capitalism. So the focus on the 1%, and by the way, their share of income has doubled in the last 30 years, and it nearly tripled between 1980 and 2006. Well, if their share is going up, somebody else's share is going down. I'll leave you to figure that part Yes, here in my notes, the top 1% did take 95% of the gains between 2009 and 2012, so I was remembering that number accurately. Real median income earnings of full-time workers, 25 to 64, prime working age group, have stagnated. Their peak was in the late 1970s.
Yep.
So when you adjust for prices, we're basically on a treadmill. Most working people, the average working person is on a treadmill. 2 minutes. Okay, I'm on page 4 out of 10. So I want to say something about the tax system, because you all know the rich don't pay taxes and all that, but you don't know that quarter of it. That an estimated 30% of multinational corporate profits pass through tax havens and avoid being known about by the American tax, the IRS. 30% just go through tax havens, and they're not even a factor. Now, it's true that the tax rate has fallen in half, but the amount of tax avoidance has grown so much that it's far worse. That $255 billion annually is lost in individual taxes, according to the Government Accounting Office. The 100 largest U.S. corporations have subsidiaries. Citibank alone has over 400 tax haven subsidiaries. If you want to check them out, they're 91 in Luxembourg, which is, these aren't necessarily, they're 90 in the Cayman Islands. But very often they're in Delaware, they're in North Dakota. States who have figured out by giving corporations a soft deal, they can get a little bit of money from the corporations who officially locate. Apple, I love my Apple toys and all that. They are the worst. They have innovated in tax aversion more than any other corporation. They pioneered the accounting trick, which is now known as, get this, the double Irish with a Dutch sandwich. Now, you don't know, a double Irish with a Dutch sandwich routes profits through Irish subsidiaries and the Netherlands, and then to the Caribbean. Therefore, they don't exist anywhere. iTunes, it turns out, has a letterbox and a few employees in Luxembourg, where downloads made in Africa, the Middle East, and other places are registered as having originated, because there's no tax on it. They move this money around so that it doesn't exist anywhere. Now, it doesn't even exist in Apple's corporate headquarters. Yeah, I know. Apple has headquarters in California, you think. No. Its official headquarters is in Nevada, because Nevada does not have a state corporate tax. This is not just Apple, it's all of these guys. It's the pharmaceuticals. So the reason that we complain about taxes, those of us who complain, is that these guys don't pay any. So my time basically is up. I'm happy to send this to anybody who wants. So let me conclude by giving you my email. If anybody puts me on, I will hunt you down, and I will ask Ann to have you killed. And believe me, this woman has connections. So.
Just kidding for whoever's listening.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Absolutely.
She denies it all. All right. WKTABB. WKTABB at the circle with the little A in it. Yeah. Earthlink, EARTHLINK .net. And I'm happy to send this to you, and my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
They'll leave it up there for me. I didn't